What happened in Episode 5 of Westworld Season 2, Akane No Mai? We have finally reached Shogun World, but what happened, and what does it mean? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. This video is brought to you with the support of my brilliant Patreon community. Please do check out the link to my Patreon page if you're interested in supporting Deep Geek or joining up for some exclusive audio content. And do consider subscribing here if you enjoy the video. There will obviously be spoilers here if you're not up to speed with Westworld. This is the episode in which we finally reach Shogun World, and it does not disappoint. But before we get into that, let's just quickly look at the other two plots we saw develop in this episode, because there were some quite significant developments there too. First, we see Bernard in the 2 weeks later timeline after he woke up on the beach. It's clear that things have moved on a little bit since we last saw them, but Delos are still unsure about exactly what happened or what might happen next. In search of answers, they have been dredging the new lake for all the host bodies we saw there and draining it. Their plan is obviously to watch the dead hosts' memories, reset them and start again. But there are two problems with this. First, about a third of them have been completely wiped. In fact, not just wiped clean, but emptied out. This is mysterious because something must have done this, but we simply don't know what yet. We'll come back to this in future videos. Second, the Cradle has been completely destroyed by fire. The Cradle held backups of all the hosts, so losing that means that the third of hosts without programming cannot be reset. They've died. So Delos can't remake those hosts, and they can't use them to find out what Dolores has been up to. And we also here have confirmation, I think, that they know not all is right with Bernard. Strand says that that's quite a story he gave them while looking at Bernard. Now, all of this probably ties in with what Dolores is going to be doing next. We see her this time in Sweetwater, and we have confirmation that she is there because she wants to get access to the Delos Mesa Hub. The train that brings in new guests from the Mesa Hub is conveniently in Sweetwater right now, so she's having it made ready to head back, presumably with her and her party with her. I say this ties in with what we saw a moment ago because the reason she's going there is to get her father, and a few days later he appears to have gone missing again, so perhaps she took him. And burning down the Cradle also seems to be the kind of thing she might do when she got there. But that is all for next episode, or perhaps the one after that. For now, the focus is very much on her relationship with Teddy, because it's getting more complex. Despite her efforts to get him to see what's really going on and buy into her plans, he remains a white hat. He suggests again that they just give up the struggle and find a ranch somewhere to live out their days. In episode 3, we see him refuse to kill a man in cold blood on Dolores' orders. He is, in her words, a good man, but she doesn't want a good man right now. In fact, she compares him and his slightly pacifistic tendencies to a disease, something she thinks needs to be destroyed in order for the greater good to come about. I said the relationship was complex because she clearly still has feelings for Teddy. She rode with him to share a view they had often enjoyed together, saying she wanted to see it for one last time. And then she takes him to bed, presumably for similar reasons, because she is going to get rid of the old Teddy. She captures him and forcibly changes his character. She had the technician put his aggression right up and his compassion right down. He will no longer be a tempering influence on her. He's now just a killing machine. There is a practical issue here. The technician warns that such big changes without a full reset could cause problems, so we should keep an eye out for that. But in terms of the plot, this means that Dolores is now only surrounded by people who agree with her 100%, and Teddy himself will not be holding back in wreaking havoc, much like Armistice with Maeve. But as well as there being a practical issue with Teddy, there is also a moral one. Dolores didn't like the character of Teddy. and so decided to change him against his will. Much like she has been riding the countryside deciding who she believes to be worthy and who should be destroyed. Despite the imagery and language in Season 2 of her being some kind of Old Testament liberator, she hasn't freed anyone yet. And indeed, at every turn she is judging, double-crossing and killing every host who doesn't agree with her 100%. It's a disturbing character arc. But of course, the main focus of the action in this episode is with Maeve. At the end of episode 3, we saw her unexpectedly arrive in Shogun World, or very close to it. Before getting onto the detail of what happens with her, it's worth noting a few things that we learned in the margins of the action that tell us a bit more about the world we are looking at. Crucially, the different parks are a lot more connected than we might have first thought. There's clearly a physical proximity, but we also learn that the writers are the same. Lee Sizemore wrote narratives and created characters for here as well as Westworld, and because he was a bit rushed for time, at least several of the characters and narratives are the same as in Westworld, just slightly more brutal and visceral, because Shogun World seems to have been built as a kind of level 2 park for those who grew bored of Westworld. So we see the Japanese versions of Maeve, Hector and Armistice, a version of Sweetwater, and even the same narrative of Hector and Armistice coming to steal the safe from the Shogun World version of Maeve's bar. All of which makes us wonder how far this extends. Do any of the other Westworld characters have doppelgangers, or doppelbots as Lee delightfully calls them, in Shogun World or other parks? Is there a Japanese Dolores, or a Teddy in the Raj? And what about the other 3 worlds we haven't seen yet? We should also note that in Shogun World, like in Westworld and the Raj, the hosts appear to have been set free from their narratives. Interestingly, we don't seem to see any human guests here, and no awareness from any of the hosts that there is a bigger world out there beyond Shogun World. But there does appear to be the opportunity for hosts to pursue independent action. When Akane killed the Shogun's emissary, that was her breaking free from her narrative and making an independent decision, much like when Maeve got off the train at the end of Season 1. Now, there is a meta-narrative or social commentary going on here as well. It may initially seem strange that Shogun World should be so strongly based on Westworld, but is that really so different to our entertainment today? Films are remade with the same characters and storylines in slightly different settings, and upping the ante in terms of gore, with studios becoming ever more risk-averse, putting money behind franchises they know people like, rather than something completely new. But getting back to Maeve, it would be easy to see this episode as largely a diversion from her quest this season to find her daughter. But a couple of really important things happen. Probably most obviously and impressively, we see a significant ramping up of her powers. Lee Sizemore lets slip that the ability to speak other languages is something locked deep inside all hosts. Maeve obviously soon manages to figure out how to access it, and with it, by implication, voice commands to all hosts. Because, as Lee also explains, and Lee was very helpful with the exposition in this episode, hosts only obey voice commands if they speak the language. Hence Maeve's inability to control the samurai at the beginning of this episode, and perhaps also the Ghost Nation warrior a few episodes earlier. But the big breakthrough came with her ability to command other hosts without saying anything. It's not spelt out, but the implication is that she has learned how to access the host mesh network. Bernard mentioned the existence of this in episode 1. He basically said that the hosts are in constant subconscious communication with one another through this network, much like a sort of Wi-Fi network. When the parks were running as normal, it meant that hosts could subtly change course to ensure they weren't disrupting each other's narratives, for example, and Bernard uses it to track down Abernathy this season. Maeve now seems to be accessing this to know what's going on around her. It's how she knows that the ninjas were about to attack. They were subconsciously broadcasting their intentions and positions across the mesh network. And not only that, but she can also issue commands to other hosts through this network, ordering the Shogun's samurai to kill each other. As we've noted before with Maeve, these are powers that we've not seen in Westworld since Ford. She can now make any host do anything. If Dolores is setting herself up as a kind of messiah figure, Maeve has now got close to godlike powers over the hosts. Which takes us nicely to thinking about the season as a whole, and how it is progressing, because we are now halfway through. What we are seeing is a long, long way from an uprising of empowered, free hosts. The vast majority of hosts have been freed from their narratives, but are not self-aware, or consciously pursuing anything outside their programmed needs and desires. Dolores is sacrificing hosts left, right and centre, as well as guests, and when someone like Teddy tries to gently suggest an alternative way, she forcibly changes his personality so he can be more useful to her. Maeve was consumed by a need for love and finding her daughter, but now she too seems set on using her powers to compel hosts to kill each other, when she could have just as easily paralysed them, say. The parallels between Akane and Maeve are emphasised a lot this episode, and so it's worth noting that when Akane avenges her adoptive daughter's death by brutally killing her murderer, Maeve tells her that she is a true mother. In other words, this is what Maeve would do if someone killed her daughter. It could get dark. Season 2 promised to be about freedom and chaos, but it's not. This episode in particular is about control. Maeve and Dolores both taking control over anyone or anything in their way, and it leaves the plot in a precarious position. Maeve and Dolores are both travelling around virtually invulnerable. Remember how Dolores shrugged off being shot several times in episode 3, and how Maeve can bring herself back online when she has been killed. Perhaps we'll see the beginnings of an answer to this next episode with Bernard. I'm covering all of Season 2 of Westworld with these episode explanations, pre-show live streams to discuss what's really going on, and theory videos. Please do subscribe and make sure your notifications are turned on if you enjoyed this video. As I said, please do also check out my Patreon page if you're interested in supporting me make more videos like this, or if you want to access some exclusive audio content. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.